everyone, and thank you so much for joining in, Dr. Judy with the Freud. And I'm Dr. Judy Rosenberg, and with me tonight is Christiana Davidson, our lovely therapist from London, England, who is in London, England, and who woke up very, very early to be with us today, and very coherent, as a matter of fact. And must be, because today is a very deep, important show. It focuses on when both parents are narcissists, and I call it one of my Dr. Judy isms, the double dungeon, and the double dungeon of darkness, and why, when both parents are narcissists, people are trapped in that very, very dark space. And this is a call-in show, everyone. So please note, call-in number 323-524-2599. And Christiana Davidson is available to do therapy and walk you through the mind map for recovery from narcissistic abuse and other childhood wounds. And welcome, Christiana. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Judy. It's great to be back.
Yeah, we do shows time to time, and I love when that happens, because it's always more interesting for me to bounce ideas off of another professional. And this is, again, this is a heavy topic. And Christiana deals with recovering from narcissistic abuse all the time. And sometimes we've got one parent that's a narcissist. Sometimes we've got a parent that's a narcissist in a borderline, or one parent that is and one parent that isn't. And again, these are labels, just for you to all know that I look at things as a system gone wrong. I will break it down to you a la mind map. And for those of you who have not yet picked up a free PDF copy of my book, Be the Cause: Healing Human Disconnect, please do. I discuss narcissism in the book as well. And also, if you have not gotten my mind map video series, please do. It is a very, very detailed walkthrough. I walk people through the mind map system. And then if you want to pair it with therapy and choose Christiana as your therapist to walk it through with a therapist, I think that would probably be the best way to do it. And you can see it comes with the journal and the book and all that stuff. So anyway, let's get into the topic. Christiana, I was asking you earlier what you find to be the symptoms of people who are truly in this double dungeon of darkness, where they really, really have nowhere to turn. How's it different than when only one parent is a narcissist?
Well, Dr. Judy, that's such an apt description. The double dungeon of darkness.
Yeah.
Because that dungeon is, when you have one narcissistic parent, you experience a relation. There is no relationship, no real connection with that parent. But, at least there may be some sort of connection, some sort of attachment possible with the other parent. But when you've got both, there is no real connection with either parent. Now, when we say that there's no connection, we know that narcissists don't see individual other people. They see objects, they see people who they can put into roles, into parts that will emotionally soothe them. So when you have two parents, there is no chance of experiencing a real healthy relationship. And that has detrimental effects, obviously.
And by the way, we have already 2 calls. I guess this is a show that speaks to a lot of people's mind, body, soul. Please, when you do call in, keep it relevant to the topic, because we have a lot of ground to cover. And let's keep the conversation relatively specific and short, so that we could take other calls and really get a feeling for what it's like to live in this double dungeon of darkness. So Hello, first caller. Thank you so much for calling in. And what would you like us to call you?
Hi, my name is Greg.
Hi, Greg. Nice to hear from you. Thank you so much. And how do you relate to this double dungeon? Now, remember, the theme for tonight is when both parents are narcissists and the effects of that on the psyche and what it's like growing up in that psychological environment.
Well, honestly, I wish that I could answer that I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that's not the case at all.
Okay, so why did
I
you
was
call?
absolutely,
Why did you call in? Maybe we can answer a question or two, but I really want to keep the call-ins relevant to the topic. So the topic
yeah,
is,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. I was absolutely raised by two narcissistic parents, and that is
Oh,
why I'm
okay. So
calling.
you were being
And
you were
yeah,
being facetious. Okay.
absolutely,
Well, that
absolutely,
probably
yeah.
saved your life, your sense of humor. I can appreciate that. Okay. Go ahead, Greg. We're listening.
Absolutely, yeah. So I actually worked with Yitz probably about 3 years ago, and he was tremendously helpful in my recovery, and honestly, I can't remember how I stumbled across you and your mind map, but
Mhm.
it was an amazing discovery, honestly, after a life of in and out of counseling and nothing seeming to ever make any sense, nothing being tangible. It was the first thing that ever made sense that, wow, there was actually a cause for these things that went on in my life, and I'm 53 years old now, and I'll be 54 here in just another couple weeks.
Happy birthday.
And I was, thank you. It's not so happy though. Unfortunately, my life story. And the reason when I saw your topic that came up, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to call in tonight. Hopefully this can help someone. I've came so far in my recovery. And I thought that honestly, I thought that the damage that had been done to me when I was a child, I thought that, that part, the damaging part, I thought was over. I thought now it's just the battle of recovery, and it's the continuing of, mending myself and all of this. And then all of a sudden on July the 16th here, just a few weeks ago, me and my wife were on vacation in Florida, and we received a phone call that my father had died and that he had killed himself. And it's to say that it's a shock is such an understatement. And so I've been facing and dealing with this just crazy cocktail of emotion, where it's like I got to a point even before I found you and your mind map and worked with Yitz. I had already been in that point for years of basically, forgiving my parents for what they had done when I was a child, but not quite understanding, still just knowing like, hey, they had their past too. And then all of a sudden this happens. And, honestly, my mom and dad's relationship was horrendous. And I waited for years and years to get a phone call that there had been like a murder suicide, and I wouldn't know who would play each role. I just had thought that's what's going to happen, or my mom's going to kill herself. But my dad killing himself is the most shocking thing that I could possibly imagine, and that everybody else, of course, everybody else that doesn't know narcissism like I do, they're really shocked by it because they don't see any reason for this person with this great personality and he's so happy and blah 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 to have done these types of things, this type of thing.
First of all, my condolences. I know that there's a mixed bag of feelings there. Narcissists are not particularly loved, and sometimes when they pass, people are actually believed, and I'm sure that there's an element of that in you, and then there's an element I'm sure of wow, I wish we could have repaired in our lifetime. So maybe speak to that a little bit. Does that resonate what I just said?
Yes. It's a weird place that I'm in, because on one end of it, it's like I'm able to see this person that I have this sympathy for, and I feel sad for where they ended up at 74 years old, taking their own life. And I have sympathy for them knowing the path that they walked, but at the same time, I'm mad. And I'm mad because it's like, yep, there it is. The last thing that you did, your last act on earth, was you put yourself and your own thoughts first. You didn't wonder or worry more about what it would do to the people that are left behind, that are having to try to now help my mother, who has also never been good on her best day. And now all of a sudden I have one brother who's a year older than me. And now all of a sudden here I am having to do everything for my mom, who I, in some senses, I hold her responsible for part of my life being stolen from me. At the same time, I'm stepping in and saying, this woman has no grip on anything whatsoever. I'm having to figure out her entire life for her financial things and all of this mess in the face of what's going on. And at the same time, the family sickness is so strong on both sides of the family tree that there is a living hell dynamic of this that is unfolding with uncles, my dad's brothers, who are blaming my mom for him killing himself. My own brother is blaming my mom for him killing himself. And at the same time, I'm dealing with, yes, still the death of my dad, a crazy mixed up thing where literally I ask people that talk about this, and they're so shocked, and how, they basically are blaming my mom. And I'm like, hey, let me clue you in a little bit. I said, I'm 53 years old and my dad hasn't called me 5 times in my entire life.
Wow.
Does that sound like the person that you know? And they just look at me with this shocked look, and they don't know how to respond. And I'm like, there's more to the story, guys, and you're really never gonna know.
So I wanted Christiana to comment on the aspect of this, which you work very closely with. Okay, so now Greg's mother is a narcissist, and Greg's father did a violent act at the end of his time, and now everything is reverberating, and now he's got to help his mother. And she's already vampired him, and so has he. So Christiana, maybe speak to the idea of what it must be like for people who now have to step in and give and organize and financially organize or give, or all of the above, when they haven't been given to. So maybe you could speak a little bit to that.
Sure. Hi, Greg. First of all, just my condolences to you, but also my empathy with the frustration I can hear in what you've shared. The thing about having narcissistic parents, especially 2 of them, we spend our lives trying to break free from serving them. We spend our lives trying to come out of this sort of constant having to put our attention on their lives, and our lives being drained of our own independence and our own freedom. And I think I can hear that in your voice, that you're thinking, gosh, I've done all this inner work, but here I am, I'm being forced to be in the same role that I've always been in. And that is exactly what is happening. This is the thing with narcissists, even on their deathbed, it can be a moment where you're being forced now to be in that role of the little boy that was perhaps, and I'm sort of projecting here, but there may have been a sense that your father wanted you to emotionally soothe your mother, and in place of him, to sort of take responsibility for her where he should have. So I don't know, Greg, if that's resonating with you, but only to say that, you know, you actually don't have responsibility for taking charge of your parents' life. You don't. That's their responsibility. I know it's not easy in a situation like this where you feel like there is no option, but I would really encourage you to make sure that you set firm boundaries with your mother, and that you don't take on all the responsibility here, because we've got to change the focus from serving the parent and emotionally regulating them and taking responsibility for their happiness and their lives. And we've got to move it round now to you, Greg. What do you need in your life, and what is the next step for you in your healing journey? And it sounds like things are sort of conspiring to help you step out even further. And that's sort of how frustration can sometimes be such a healthy catalyst to really moving out even more from that role that you've always been in, because it's not yours to be in anymore.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the really cool thing, and trust me to speak like this is the person that I am today. It's not the person that I was years ago. And so trust me to speak like this is not, there's a lot behind it. And I could take up hours telling you of just horrific years of my life. But I've you know, it's almost like the movie The Godfather, where they keep sucking you back in. You know,
Yes.
You feel like that. It's like, I'm trying to get out, and you get sucked back in. You know,
It's just take.
would, yeah, and it would be, you know, it would be definitely that. But the really cool thing about it is that I have set those boundaries with my mother really clearly, and I've told her that, Mom, I will absolutely walk away from this situation. I said, it will be the hardest thing I've ever done, but I will walk away from this situation. And I explained to her, you know, in not too lengthy of terms, but that she and my dad had essentially robbed me of most of my childhood and most of my younger adult life, and that will not happen. And I've warned her, and I have set those boundaries. And my wife, I have a lovely wife, and she's so helpful with everything. And she's on the same page. She understands this whole thing. She's been through this journey with me. And, you know, so my mom's aware, and those boundaries have been set. So at the same time, yeah, it's very shocking. And like you said, you know, maybe me and my brother had played that role of, you know, sort of like filling the husband role in for a wife that, you know, as we were kids, you know, Dad worked 2 jobs. He was never home. His measure of am I a good man was taught to him basically like, if you go to work and you work hard, what could you possibly do wrong? And it's basically like, well, hey, Dad, guess what? Everything else. And that's what they did.
But the thing
wrong,
is, Greg, you know, there is that is part of the dysfunction of these narcissistic families. You know, there is a payoff there for your father as well. You know, that he wasn't in the house and he didn't have to be with your mother, who sounds possibly quite emotionally, quite a lot to handle. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Does that resonate?
I have a question, Greg. So first of all, after hearing what you have to say, maybe I should have called the show The Triple Dungeon of Darkness, because, you know, your parents weren't there for you when you were growing up. And now after their death, you're still in a position of being pulled into the system. And so it feels like no way out. However, as Christiana said, it's you now to take back your quality of life and do what's best for you. And I know that you're a decent human being. And so, we want to rise to the highest level of human decency without vampiring ourselves. And that's a tough one, right? Because you don't want to be that horrible mean person. But then again, number one, you can't be that horrible mean person to yourself. Having lived through this double dungeon with your parents, and having obviously done the work, what would you like to impart to the people listening now and in the future, to really any wisdom that you'd like to impart for those that are suffering from this in this particular time?
Well, just to know that, honestly, and some folks that may not be, maybe they're listening to this for the first time, like I was at one point, and I just want them to know that, hey, I'm not, I'm not on the payroll or something here. I'm a person that stumbled across this, and I want the folks to know that the lies that were in their head, the things that they told themselves about themselves for most of their lives, that they were lies.
Yeah.
And that there's something tangible here, like as if it were a medication that you take for something. It's just that plain and simple. There's a cause and there's an effect. Parents love to admit that I can have a positive influence on my kids, but parents hate to admit that they can have a negative influence on their kids. And we all have that to some degree. And there is help in being able to wrap your mind around the cause and effect, and the fact that these things that we develop, these defense mechanisms, be it drugs, be it alcohol, be it food, be it whatever you can shove in, on, and around your body. It doesn't have to be drugs and alcohol. It's all the effects of that. And we can't be afraid to look at it. We can't be afraid to look at it. I have a brother who's horrified to look at it. He doesn't want to hear it, and unfortunately for him, he's down that same path, and he has those narcissistic tendencies just like I have. I wanted to break the cycle, but I had to become it to learn to hate it. I wanted to break the cycle when I was a kid. I knew there was something wrong with our family, and I told myself I'm going to break the cycle. But I had no idea what that would mean. I had no idea that it would mean that I would become a person with narcissistic tendencies and suffer all the consequences of living like that, and get to a point where I hated it so bad that was the thing that unlocked my just wanting to do something different and desperately trying to find something. And boom, one night, there it was. All of a sudden, there's a cause and effect. You're not just a bad kid. You're not just, we were just bad kids, that's what we did because we were bad. And it's like, no, that's not what happened at all. We developed these defense mechanisms to try to contend with a life that we were ill-equipped to deal with. And that's what happens. You grow up and you don't have the tools. And all of a sudden life comes at you. You're not a kid anymore.
And I just want to add to that how easy it is for a kid to swallow the lies. All you have to tell little Johnny is, Johnny, you're stupid. Or all you have to do is ignore little Johnny and he feels that he's unimportant. Or little Mary, you're a loser, you're ugly, or you will never be loved. These messages are powerful because our parents are like our gods. They're our source, and we buy in. And lately I've been calling the mind map system the mind straightening out system, because that's what it is. We have this cracked lens of perception. We bought into this lie that puts us into psychological prison, and then we repeat the lie in our head. So we self-infect, and then through the process, we go deep in and we tell the truth, and we tell the unpopular truth about the cause, which is always the blueprint. And in essence, this process is about letting out the psychological poison so that you don't implode. Look what your dad did. He imploded. Okay. At the end of his life, he had the narcissistic wound. Why do you think he passed it on to the next generation? Right. And so he didn't explode, which he probably did in his lifetime. He probably exploded on your mother and exploded on you and your brother, whoever. But at the end of his life,
absolutely.
he imploded, meaning he turned all the anger and all the aggression unto himself. And that was the end of his life. And then that implode therefore caused this ripple effect of now you having to cycle through it again and take care of your mother and take care of things. So, I really appreciate you sharing it. And after all these years, it's still remarkable to me, even though I created this mind map, which there's a long story. Read my book, okay? But it's still so remarkable to me to walk people through this journey and help them paradigm shift out of the mess, because this is not just talk therapy where you talk through these problems. This is a paradigm shifting system where you're not the same person that entered from point A when you exit at point C. So I really appreciate you sharing, and I know there are other calls, and we'll cover a lot of ground. So thank you, Greg. Take care of yourself. You hear that? Number one.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Right, you're welcome.
Thanks.
Okay. Good night. And
Good night.
thank you. Good night. Do we have another caller still on the line?
We sure do.
Okay, we'll take another caller, and then we'll discuss some more information, and we'll weave the calls in to supplement a lot of the information. Thank you so much. Hello, and what name should I call you, please?
Hello, Dr. Judy?
Yes, hi. What's your name, or what would you like me to call you?
Oh, my name is Jen. You can call me Jen.
Hi, Jen. Welcome, and thank you. And tell me how you relate to the show. And you're welcome to ask me, Christiana. We'll probably both comment. And you've got two minds here to pick. And so go ahead. How do you relate to the topic of two parents, narcissists, double dungeon effect?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Judy. I have to admit, I'm a little bit nervous, and my trauma responses are kicking in a little bit here, because it's just not a topic we were ever allowed to talk about. So I feel like my throat getting a little tight and my tummy hurting. But I'm working through it, and I'm so glad I was able to get on with you. But both of my parents were narcissists. My father was a covert, and which is kind of harder, I guess, for the outside world to even see or understand. So internally,
I just want to stop you for a minute. And could you describe what the effects of a covert? What is that covert to you mean?
Yeah.
Because people, this is an educational show. People want to understand what's covert, what's overt, how did it affect you? So maybe explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, so covert is like where it's like narcissistic tendencies, like undercover, or narcissism like undercover, meaning like to the outside world, you might think, oh wow, that person is very friendly, they're very generous, they're very charismatic, like they have a lot of charisma. But at home, it's just the total opposite. It's put downs, it's emotional abuse, you see a whole other side of this person that they try to hide from the world, and it's scary. So my point would be, like, we would go to a family event, and it was like a light switch would turn on, and my parents would just be beaming with like this energy I didn't see at home. So when I was really young, I said, just something didn't feel right. This just made me feel so empty and like soulless and very uncared for my entire childhood. And
So,
the only time we would really, it was me and my brother, the only time we would really be praised or talked about favorably would be like at these family functions and holiday parties where, you know, they would express all these great things we were doing. But at home, it was very different. It's just they didn't care. And it was also mixed with alcoholism as well.
so they're filling the hole in the soul. You can't turn to mom, you can't turn to dad. I think you said it well about the hollowness. So maybe Christiana, you could speak to that hollowness because you certainly work with
Mm.
a lot of people who, you know, this is like this extreme um facade that they put on where socially they're one way and then they come
Mm.
home and it's a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and now the person
Hmm.
is left with this emptiness. So maybe you could speak to that to our caller, Jen.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hi, Jen. Thank you for so bravely speaking up for yourself. Because that's the one thing that we're terrified of doing when we grow up with two narcissists. We're groomed to keep the
Hmm.
show going, and that's
Yeah.
how we get our love. And if we step outside of being the supply that the narcissists need, then we are virtually risking our lives and our very existence. So no wonder you're having that trauma
Yeah.
sort of type reaction in your body. This is something, it's not actually about being on the show now. This is a response from childhood. But
Hmm.
Jen, when you were talking that whole thing of emptiness, because that is
Hmm.
exactly how we do feel growing up in that home. There's an emptiness because you aren't actually seen as an individual. You're an object.
Hmm.
There's no
Yeah.
actual sort of inquisitiveness from the parents who want to get to know you and your likes and tell me what
Yeah.
your thoughts are about this. No, it's not that at all. You are literally groomed to be in a role to meet the needs of the parent, to emotionally regulate them. So whether you're out in public, you're going to have to keep up the show of the happy
Hmm.
family and beaming with joy. And that creates an emptiness within us as well. It's like I have to cut off, I have to disconnect from myself and become an
Yeah. It
object, an
feels
empty
very,
object.
very fake and forced. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
really hard to deal with. And then see, my mother ended up passing away. She did struggle, both of my parents being narcissists, but also they both struggled and enabled each other with alcoholism.
Yes.
So there was like a two-piece of emotional unavailability here, and just confusing statements and just things not making sense. And I always felt very like I just wasn't living in a real world. And I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and manic depression
Mhm.
at 13 years old. I just feel like my environment was so unstable. I had nowhere to turn. I
Yes.
was internally going crazy. And I started to break
Jenny,
through this
just
cycle. I went through this for many years when I had my son. And I realized I'm not going to live like this. I'm breaking the cycle. Um, and I started my healing process then. My son's 13 now. But that helped a lot spending, and I cut a lot of the family out. I had to cut my parents out and really keep my son and me away from them. And I felt like a normal person, like I never felt before. It was interesting. And
like
my
I can
mom
hear
did
the
end
relief
up,
almost.
yeah. And my mom ended up passing away, and she passed away due to her alcoholism. The doctors had told her many times, if you don't stop drinking, you will die. So my father, they would hide this from us, even though we knew the truth. And even though when we read her death certificate, it said what it said, he still just, no, that's not it. That's, still just covering for her. And oh my gosh, but she goes to her deathbed not even really knowing me as a person and not even caring to know me. And occasionally she would tell me, you just don't belong in this family, you're just different. And that hurt a lot. So I never felt like I belonged.
You were the scapegoat, Jen.
I just wanted to comment, there's
Yeah.
that emptiness, you know, you never belong in the family. What a message. And she too imploded. She imploded on
Mm-hmm.
alcohol and aggression turned inward. That's what happens. And I wanted to also comment that a lot of a traditional lens of therapy sees the problem as the anxiety or the depression or
Mm-hmm.
whatever symptom. And that's not how we see it through the lens of the mind map. The depression and all of those symptoms are the outcome of the problem. So interesting, we never have diagnoses like your mother's a narcissist and hurt you to the extent where it dysregulated you and took you on a downward spiral. I don't see that in the DSM. Do you? I mean, it's crazy to me because as you could tell, I'm not shy about it. I'm just not a fan of traditional therapy, and I'm not a fan of treating.
Me either. It makes me very uncomfortable. They did try to take me to some counseling because it was like, oh, Jen has anxiety, Jen has manic depressive. Let's project our mental illnesses on her. Like, she's the crazy one in the family. It's not us. Like,
Right.
We're great. We're the saviors. And it's like, whoa, no. This is whatever I'm going on in my body is being caused by you guys, and this isn't fair. And I felt that as a teenager. I felt really angry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it, you know, it's that when we get these diagnoses and there's a disconnect in the profession of psychology between the symptom and the cause, it becomes more of you're the problem, you're the identified patient, you're the sick one. I can't tell you how many parents, for example, drag their children in to say, fix my child. I even have a case study in my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, where a mother dragged her child in here because she was suffering from anxiety and said, fix her, bye. And the truth of the matter is that she created anxious attachment in her daughter by leaving her too early. And I was trying to work through this, but then I got the phone call, which was, Dr. Judy, we're canceling our appointment. Okay, why? The little girl was so on board. She was so excited about the mind map. We're canceling it because we need a real doctor. You're not giving her enough skill. Yeah, you're not giving her enough emotional, behavioral tools. She uses the word tools. You're not giving her tools. Of course, I'm not giving her tools. Not that I'm opposed to tools, but I'm trying to explain to her that the cause of her anxiety was that, unfortunately, and I don't blame the parents, I just connect the dots, that when mom leaves child in childcare too soon, it's an example of you're not creating healthy dependency to then create healthy independence. And it is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. However, you know, just like everyone suffering from these narcissistic injuries, they have butterflies in their stomach to tell the truth. Well, you know, this is a kind of therapy where you tell the truth, and it's politically incorrect in some sense, but who cares? It's healing. It's getting the psychological poison out. And I don't know what better method to use to help people turn around the system gone wrong than to tell the truth and not tell a bunch of lies of, well, I'm sorry, you are an anxious person. You are a depressed person. These are just inaccuracies.
And also, you know,
wonderful, Dr. Judy, very helpful.
Thank you.
This is, Jen, this is also, you know, it's such a common feature of narcissistic parenting. You know, their neglect of you as a young child leads to symptoms in your life, understandably. I mean, we could almost predict it, because that is the body and the soul trying to heal itself. But then what happens is the narcissist will use that to keep up the show. So even in your suffering and your illness, that's also used to maintain the status of the narcissist. it's, you know, you can't win. You cannot win as a
Never.
child.
You never win. You never
No,
can. It's
but you
horrible.
can,
It's
though.
the worst.
You can when you're later. You can really exit this. You know, with systems like the mind map and
You
and
can
working through it.
when you bust. Sorry, Christiana. You can when you bust
Yeah.
the lies, right? You can
Mm.
when you expose the lies. And one of the worst things a parent can do to his or her child is to break the child and then blame the child for the symptoms that they're exhibiting after being broken. I'll say it again.
You're so right.
It's
It wasn't fair, and then to be told you don't belong here, it's like, wow.
very, very painful.
Yeah,
It's
it's hard.
bullying.
Even to this day, it's very, very hard for me to make friends and maintain romantic relationships. It's very hard for me to trust people, and yeah, it's very difficult. So I do spend a lot of time alone, and I lived alone probably for about 7 or 8 years, and I was able to do a lot of healing. I still have a lot of healing to go. So I really want to look at your program with the Matt thing, and I was on your website, so I definitely want to check that out.
Yeah, and you know, we give free consultations, so just please feel free to reach out and learn more about this, and start by downloading the book. It's free, or you can get it on Amazon.com as well. And if you like the hard copy, you can order it, or if you just want a PDF, it's free to you. And once you start understanding this, you can no longer be a sucker to the lies. You're just going to be too smart. You'll be playing a different game of life. And so parents teach you one game of life, which is to be at the effect of, there's something wrong with you, you're this and that and that and this. And then you flip the system around. That's where the paradigm shift comes in. So yeah, obviously I'd love to see you do the mind map work, particularly because of your situation with the parents and this traditional therapy. Again, what good will it do just to talk about it without an actual plan, a plan of examining the wounds, their impact on you, and how you defended against them, and how to morph out. This has got to be planned out. It can't just be random. How does that make you feel? See you next week. But just doesn't cut it.
Yeah, it never worked for me. I would stop going after a couple of sessions. I'm just like, I'll just figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
Reading books and going on YouTube. So I'm so glad I found you all. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I appreciate that, and thank you for calling in. And yeah, of course, feel free to be in touch. Okay.
Cool. Have a wonderful night.
Okay, you do the same. Okay. All right. So let's delve into this a little bit more, Christiana. And do we have any other calls?
That's it for right now.
Okay, so let's mind map this. So if you would be so kind as to put the mind map up, and then we can break it down. And you see childhood wounds, panel 1. Those wounds include physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, and smothering, controlling. And then the narcissistic abuse is really where the parents do not have empathy, and they are disconnected emotionally from their children. They use them as objects to perform, to control, to act out their agenda, make them look good. And so as a result of this disconnect, this wounding is particularly painful because it leaves you with this reaction, this feeling of emptiness, this feeling of no place to turn. And if you've got 2 of them, that's why I call it the double dungeon, because at least if you have a mother or father or one primary caregiver there for you, then it can mitigate the damages. Because like a dungeon, right? If you have one door that's open, it's no longer a dungeon, you can get out. But if you've got both doors closed, mother's closed, father's closed, or one primary closed, the other primary closed, checkmate. You're in that double dungeon of darkness, and that hole in the soul of fear, of emptiness, of anxiety, of loneliness is that reaction, along with it being encoded into probably Christiana, the encoding. What encoding do you typically see from that injury?
Well, it's, you know, that I'm not good enough unless I'm meeting the expectations of others.
Yeah.
You know, so what happens with narcissistic parents is we're groomed to be supply. So we come to know ourselves as supply. You know, we have to make ourselves be supply for others, because then we're okay.
You know, I just had that image where there's a horse, right? And then there's a carrot in front of the horse, but it's on a bar in front of its head,
Yes.
and it'll never get the carrot, but it has to run really fast and work really hard to try to get it. And so the carrot is always in front of the horse and never in the mouth of the horse. And that's the image that just popped in my mind, is that it's like this exercise in futility. You never get
Yes.
it, but the wish is, and that's what the Freud are you doing, trying to please and please and please? It's not going to work. But yet we're so invested in trying to create a bond with our parents, to please our parents, to have them
To survive.
And to get I have a show called Molecule of Love. Go check that out, you know, to get that little molecule of love.
The thing about these, you know, the situation is, yes, you know, we're making we've got to be supply, but the thing is, you know, with narcissists, they're also they're grabbing the supply. So as much as we're looking for to get some sort of breadcrumbs of love and affirmation, the narcissist is take as well. So you know, we're in an environment where we're having to snatch at things and compete for this, and, you know, try to compete with our siblings. And it just, you know, it's really, it's like being in a playground at a nursery school, and all, you know, the children are all fighting over the toys and things like that, because that's what it is. You know, it's children raising children. And narcissists they're stunted at that emotional developmental level. They never differentiated.
Right.
And so what happens is they try to stop you from differentiating as well, because if you do, then that's their supply leaving. So that's how this whole multi-generational pattern persists.
So they're always receivers, and they're never
Takers.
sharers.
Yeah.
They're takers. And so when you have a taker of a parent and a child who needs to receive, it's just a real horrible system gone wrong. Big emotional scars. I was wondering, was there a question in the chat room?
Let me look. I'm sure there probably is. Actually, right now it looks like just a lot of comments back and forth to what you're talking about, but no questions. But if you're in the chat room, please ask a question and I'll relay it to Dr. Judy.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So you can see this encoding. I'm on panel 3 here. We're on panel 3. So the encoding is that I've got to please in order to be loved. I'm not important. That's a big one. I'm not lovable. I mean, how sad is that? I've heard core beliefs like, I'm so unimportant, I shouldn't have even been born. You know, that's pretty bottom of the barrel. And so this is not how you were born. You weren't born unimportant. You weren't born this way. However, you came to believe it. And if you look at that DNA strand, it's coiled upon itself. And so I use the mind map metaphorically. And so if you could see the bars of prison, so this is a psychological prison. And in this subject matter, let's say the blue ribbon stands for mom, the blue DNA strand, or the pink one, let's say, okay, and the blue one stands for dad. Or you know, in the sense of same-sex couples, one is one partner with carrying more of the male energy or the other female energy, and then the children are going nowhere. You can see that the little people on the DNA strand are just not climbing. They're walking around, sitting around, lying around, no motion, no growth, and they're stuck. So, you know, the parents set the bar. And in this system, look what happens. Okay, so let's follow the yellow brick road of panel 1, wounds lead to reactions, lead to encodings. And then we've got panel 4, 5, 6, boom, 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 chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. And the defenses are what Jen was referring to, the alcoholism and all kinds of defense mechanisms, the narcissistic defense of using people, objectifying people, and denying, and the false self, right? The defense of the false self. And the chaos and the defenses blow because they don't withhold anything. They don't hold up. And so there's a breakdown. And we turn that breakdown into a breakthrough through truth, through processing the emotions. So what other defenses do you see, Christiana, when working with people who are injured by both mother and father? What defenses do they resort to try to fill their hole in the soul, protect themselves, and so on?
Yeah, Dr. D, you know, those negative beliefs that the child will take on about themselves, they will often cause the child to try to prove the opposite, but sometimes in unhealthy ways. So if there's a child that's taken on the belief that, you know, I'm invisible or I'm not seen, there may be the tendency to sort of force people to see them, you know, and it may lead to, I don't know,
like a reaction for me,
unhealthy ways.
right?
Exactly, yeah.
So
I'm not heard, you know, ends up shouting at people and, you know, needing to get their message across at any cost.
So I know we have a question, but I wanted to make a comment about what you're saying. So it could go two ways. It could go into that people pleasing, person just disappears, and it could be the other way where they do disappear, but the false self is very convincing and very strong, and so they can covertly aggrandize themselves, or they can overtly and passive aggressively manipulate to make their world in control. So again, the game is power and control versus intimacy and love. And I did a couple of shows on it. So please not only listen to this show, but I must have 400 plus up there, and lots of blogs, by the way, on my blog section on my website, psychologicalhealingcenter.com. And many of those videos Christiana appears in. So we have enjoyed putting this out together time to time. And so go ahead, we'll take one more question. I know it's almost time to end the show, but yeah, what was the question, Tony?
This one says, should we test new acquaintances for empathy? It's freaky to participate in new relationships only to realize the lack of empathy later on.
Yeah, I say yes. So this is where we vet people. So part of the mind map is my favorite quote by Einstein. I put it in my book. Smart people solve problems. Geniuses prevent them. So go ahead and be a genius and vet people and see how they treat the waiter, see how they treat animals, see how they treat other people, see how generous they are, see how they treat you. Give it some time. Don't do what I do still sometimes. I do positive projection. I give people credit where credit is not due. So I've got to be careful with that. Like, oh, they must be wonderful. Like, of course they're honest. And so I've learned from many of those positive projections. So now I can teach it to you. However, yes, any other comments? I say definitely vet them. You don't have to be paranoid and put them in this paranoid double dungeon of darkness, nor do you have to welcome them in with flowers. Just kind of see where, park them in neutral, see where they're at. Do you want to add to that, Christiana?
Yeah, only, to also sort of be aware of what they call the love bombing phase, which can be so alluring to us who have deep attachment wounds. Just to be aware of maybe sort of a sense of being swept off your feet and loved unconditionally, because that's what we're all looking for. But unconditional love is something that grows and takes time, and that's what we have to hold ourselves back from just jumping into, because you want to, but actually we need to take responsibility and keep ourselves safe, because we do have a tendency to attract these sorts of types that will be vampiring and actually offering fake love at the start.
Yeah,
in order
we're hungry for it.
Yeah.
So yes, we can't allow our hunger and desperation to let people who are, watch out for those extremes. Oh, you're amazing, amazing, amazing. I met my soulmate. You're the one. Okay, maybe. However, give it time. Show me. Earn it. Earnership. So I think we're just about out of time. And again, I wanted to thank the people who called in and the people who have joined in. And please subscribe and tell your friends, because this is something that I'd like to see in my lifetime solved, in the sense that people could become aware and they no longer have to be at the effect of this, and they can truly flip the system. So please pay it forward. And we do have a merch store. You can buy the Be the Cause t-shirt and wear it, and then stare at it and have that there for you to really tap into, and just have on your being. And then, of course, the Mind Map video series in the book, and therapy. And if you'd like to have a free consultation with Christiana or myself or anybody else on the team, please do be in touch, okay? And the website, psychologicalhealingcenter.com. So, Christiana, thank you. And Tony, thank you always for looking out for the callers and being the backbone here. And we'll see you next time.
And Dr. Judy, before we go, make sure you let everybody know September 1st. In September, your show is going to be live on Roku.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So September 1st, my show is going to be live on Roku. And Tony, how do they get to Roku?
Just if you have a Roku device, just once September comes around, just type in UBN Go, and that'll open up the channel, and just download that channel, and then you can watch it 24/7. And Dr. Judy will be on several times a week.
That's awesome. You mean they'll just keep repeating shows and like that?
You can find your shows there, and then also the live show there too. So.
Okay, and then they can have a menu where they can plug in Dr. Judy WTF with the Freud.
I believe so, yeah. So.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, thank you for that. I'm excited. So
Me too.
And pay it forward, everyone. Okay, thank you. See you next time. Good night, everyone.
And if you've enjoyed my show, please subscribe to my channel. If you